I think,
Go ahead.
I think it's good because a lot of teachers struggle with the concept of project-based learning. And I think just like we try to chunk it down for students, we need to chunk it down for teachers so they understand all of the different aspects that they can work on in each project. Like first, they might first just uh, teach their students the design process or whatever process they're going to go through with their project. And then maybe teach one or two steps in that process and build into the entire process. So project-based learning, you can take, say, the prototyping process in the overall engineering design process and just focus on that. I broke it down in the high school by in the first like freshman year and sophomore year of my engineering students, I would start with the brainstorming process. We would have fun with that. We would start with the research process and have fun with that. We might do some crazy prototypes just to demonstrate what the prototyping process would be and the types of frustrations they would come up with trying to create prototypes, failing at creating them and having to redesign them. And then sometime down the line in your junior or senior year, and this is why I really enjoyed having all 4 years with these students, because you had the time to break them into this process and then be able to chunk down the engineering design process into different steps. And then at the end, when they have their capstone, they have to go through the entire process to develop their own project. So I think it's very important when we teach instructors and teachers at any level that those steps in the process need to be developed first before you dive into the entire project process, because that becomes overwhelming, not only for the teacher, but also for the student.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of what, when I'm walking into schools, and I've actually begun having been able to walk into some schools and say, hey, because schools are wanting to dump some monies in and say, hey, we want a solution, but we want it tomorrow, or we want it in 9 weeks. I'm saying this is really building a culture rather than building an immediate solution. And so that, I'm not sure why there's this struggle against giving it time, letting it develop. You know, some schools aren't willing to give me 4 years, let alone, I mean, a year, let alone 4 years. I said, well, this is really going to take, because this is a new way of thinking. This is a new approach to helping students really, well, your teachers becoming more engaged with students and vice versa. So you can't just say, we're going to do one thing today and do something else tomorrow and expect it to work. There's no magic wand here. So hopefully, listening to you, an experienced one engineer, two, an experienced teacher, that we could kind of get that point across. What do you think?
Right. And as the person who's developing those presentations for teachers and instructors, it's also important to understand that each teacher has a different process that they're trying to teach to the students, and maybe they just don't know how to break it down. Maybe it's a science class and they have a science experiment and they need to break it down into little chunks and then use PBL to bring all of those chunks together. Maybe there's math classes that do projects in class, but and what I tried to do, this is great for cross-curricular activities. Typically, when I was in high school, I would ask the math teacher, well, when are you teaching students this type of math? Because we're going to be working on a project with capacitors that use different types of math. And I would like to know when you are going to study that, or when the students are going to be studying that, so I know that we can work together in order to not only provide the content for the math class, but also the content for electronics in trying to, let's say, calculate the charge time of a capacitor. There's certain types of math that students need to know in order to do that. So can we develop a project together and kind of time it where they're learning that in both classes? So they're cementing content through active projects, but also crossing those curricular from academic to engineering or academic to different types of content area. And I think that helps bring their overall learning into perspective and how it actually applies into the real world.
I totally agree. And when I refer to that, I call it just being agnostic of discipline. It just pulls things together. So yeah. Liz, I appreciate your time so much. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome anytime. I'm happy to share my knowledge and things I used to do in engineering because it was a really fun class. I really enjoyed the students. I'm still in touch with them too. I've been writing recommendation letters for Eagle Scout Courts of Honor and scholarships and college admissions. So it really is a great process. And I think the PBL process, I think, helps teachers become engaged with their students as well. It becomes more of a learning process for both parties. And I think it makes it more fun that way.